So Gen V is filled with some of the most extreme and graphic deaths that I think I've ever seen in any TV show ever, with maybe the exception of their main counterpart, The Boys, which actually has a hell of a lot more. However, like I said, Gen V does have a lot of their own. So with the new season having just dropped, I'm here to go through and explain them all. And I mean them all. From the death of Golden Boy himself to the random death of Marie's entire family who she killed with her own period blood. Which, while that was extremely graphic and kinda messed up, wasn't even the top 5 most extremely graphic deaths in just season 1 alone. So with that said, and without wasting any more time, let's just jump over to the first ever death seen in Gen V the TV show. Which is of course, like we previously mentioned, the death of Marie's own mother, who died at the hands of Marie during her first ever period. You see, a shocked and scared Marie in this moment controlled her own period blood and used it to slice the neck of her own dear mother. However, sadly for Marie, while this may have been her first ever kill on screen, it wouldn't be her last, as moments later when her dad arrived to help, she exploded all the blood around her to such a degree that her dad got completely messed up and killed in the process, marking an extremely graphic start to any TV show ever and an extremely traumatic first period for this poor child. However, now following this and later in the same episode, we see some unconfirmed deaths of the security guards that Sam completely fucked up during his first attempt at escaping the woods. I say unconfirmed deaths because we really can't be sure if they died in that moment or not, but given how powerful Sam is and the fact that getting hit by him is like getting hit by a moving truck, I'll just add them here just in case. But now later in that same first episode, and after learning of Brink's lies and the woods beneath the school, Golden Boy himself grabs hold of Brink and burns his entire body to a crisp. He then chases after and fights both Marie and Jordan before ultimately flying into the sky and exploding into a million pieces. Which of course, if you ask me, is still one of the most stupid deaths in the entire show. Like, he goes through the trouble of killing Brink in search for his brother, but then kills himself before ever finding him. Like, is that really the path we're taking here? But anyway, moving on, the next death we get is in the very next episode and is the death of random janitor Ron. A guy who gets his throat slit by a security guard after entering the underground woods area. A brief and very unimportant death in the overall show, but the only death that is actually seen in episode 2 of season 1. However, in the beginning of the next episode, we see a flashback scene where Sam kills a random unnamed security guard by shoving his fist through his stomach and into his mouth. Which was honestly fairly deserved on the account that Sam was fairly calm in that moment up to the point that stupid fuck shot him with a dart hoping to put him down. And that's like shooting a rhino with a Nerf gun and expecting it to do anything but beat your ass. But now following this, and in that same episode, we actually see the death of another member of security when Emma, in tiny form, climbs into his head and brain fucks him to death, giving him some sort of aneurysm to the point that he of course dies. Following this and during their escape, Sam once again went on one of his killing sprees and killed multiple security guards while escaping. We don't actually see them die or get killed, but we get to see the bodies panned out on the floor in a fairly bloody mess. He then, in the following episode, does the exact same thing to another 8 or so guards who came to capture him. Only these deaths and guards on the account of his fairly fucked up head look incredibly weird and are in fact the deaths of puppets. You see, while in puppet form, he bashes the face of one guard, rips the arm and head off of the second, and then uses that head to kill another, before ripping the arm from one and using it to impale him through the mouth. He then rips the intestines from one guard before squishing another's brain and ripping one completely in half, before finally ending off by ripping the head clean off of the final puppet that came to capture him, marking the end of one of the weirdest, the most fucked up scenes I think I've ever seen or covered on this channel to this day. But now just getting back to normality, kinda, the next death that we see is the death of Dusty, who got completely exploded into a million pieces by Kate's memory dream version of Golden Boy. A fairly unimportant death and a fairly unimportant character, but one that at least to me deserves mentioning. But now, at the end of that episode, we actually get to see that Dr. Cardoza finally perfected his drug and used it to kill his patient, Betsy, in an extremely rotten way. However, again, we don't actually get to see her die, but instead get to see her body laid out on the floor of the woods. We then move over to episode 7 where we finally get to see the death of Dean Shetty, after Kate pushed her to slit her own throat using her powers. Which I can't lie is still to this day one of the most satisfying deaths in the entire show. The next death we actually see is another extremely deserved death and is the death of Dr. Cardoza himself. You see, he met with Nadia to give her the virus that was created to kill all supes. However, unknowingly to him, Congresswoman Nadia is one of the most corrupt superpowered freaks that we have ever seen in the Boys TV show. So of course, in that moment, to make sure there was no loose ends, she blew his head apart using her blood manipulation powers. Which again, given the heinous acts that he committed when creating that virus, really makes this one hell of a deserved death, and honestly one that I would have liked to be a bit more painful, but in the end, having his entire head blown off is satisfying enough. Now we then move over to the final episode of the season, which is also the episode with the most amount of insanely graphic deaths of all. You see, the first death that we get in this episode is the death of Bob, the security guard who got his face punched in by Sam during the rescue attempt of the other kids. We then see the body of Andy, a poor child who died to that virus that we mentioned earlier, which I can't lie is an extremely unlucky and sad way to go. Kate then turns around and tells the guard that was following them to eat his own hands, which of course he does without question. However, it is still kinda unclear at this time if he actually died to that act itself. Now we then move outside where we see one of the freed prisoners melt the face of a professor, for no other reason at all other than the fact that she was of course a human and considered inferior to them in every way. Following this, we see another suit prisoner blow up a random guy with her lightning powers, before we then see that same girl get her head blown off by Jet, who appears to be a secret member of FOTH who was undercover here at the school. But now following his cover being blown, he gets jumped by Kate, who pushes him to eat one of his own bombs, blowing his own head into a million pieces. We then get a quick run through and some scenes of several bodies that are seen all across the school. There isn't much to be said or seen about many of them, but they do exist, so I'll just mention them here and move on. We then see Marie, during the final confrontation of the season, stop the heart of a random superpowered girl who is trying to kill Jordan in that moment. She then awakens to her powers in an extremely cool way to manipulate the blood of the bodies all around her, to the point that she then makes blades that she then uses to stab another of the escaped prisoners in the back, saving a pile of people who honestly, in my opinion, deserve an extremely painful and graphic death of their own. However, again, because of the actions of Marie in this moment, we don't actually get to see those deaths ever happen. Now following this, we then get to see Jordan strangle the life out of another random prisoner, which is also the final death of Gen V Season 1. Now currently Season 2 only has 3 episodes out and is airing weekly at this point on, so I can't really explain every death in that season just yet, but when I can, I will. So if you'd like to see that video when it drops here on the channel, like this video down below so I know you're interested, and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss it. Other than that, that's going to do it for me and this one. I hope you all have a great day or night wherever you are, and peace.